Okay, guys, I've been playing Last of Us Part 1 on the PC, the remake, and I'm loving it so far. I remember playing this game back on the PS3 when it first came out. Not the remake, but the original, and it was gorgeous back then, and it is still gorgeous today. The update, it's just, the remake really does update the graphics. The story still feels the same, and it's great. There's nothing like sprawling skyscrapers in a city aged by Mother Nature. You will easily forget about the fungal zombies while searching for parts and enjoying the rain hitting the collapsing buildings with thunder echoing in the background as clickers approach. Sorry, I get caught up in the moments sometimes because this game has amazing moments in it. It is just really, it's about the adventure, not necessarily the destination. The destination brings some spicy stuff, but the adventure that you will have exploring a world that Naughty Dog developed that no one else has been able to come close to in a post-apocalyptic world. It's just, they added so much detail to the buildings that are tumbling in the background, what Mother Nature's capable of in reclaiming what's hers. And I gotta say, I'm loving it. But it's not all roses. First up, this PC port does have some issues, so prepare for that, especially if you're trying to play this on a certain type of system. We'll get into that a little bit more as we get into this. What I'm playing the game on is my NVIDIA 3090, which plays it great. It's maxed out. All the settings are maxed out. I do use DLSS so I can get that higher frame rate, so I'm around 60 frames, so it's beautiful on my high refresh rate monitor, and it's a great experience. Now, the problem lies within, and people, this has been reported in the reviews from Steam Store, that there's crashes going on, there's performance issues, but I see a lot of those reviews are actually only like 0.1 hours played. It takes at least 1 to 2 hours to compile the shaders right now. That could change down the road, especially if you're on Steam Deck. They should cache, and you should just download the cache. So prepare to wait is what is really going on here more than anything. And I'm really shocked that people are reporting their issues before they've compiled the shaders. Now, some of them are crash related, which that is totally viable, and I agree wholeheartedly. It should not crash for you. But if that's not the case, if you're saying, oh, this game plays like shit, and you just don't really give it time to compile, it gives you a warning at the beginning of the game. So when you start playing the game, hit the new game and everything, and it's still compiling the shaders, it's going to give you that warning. It's going to say, you sure you want to continue? It's going to degrade your performance. Apparently, people cannot read when they're doing their reviews. But once again, that's not to shout down all the reviews. I do think that some of them are very much viable and need to be addressed soon. As long as they're addressed within the next week or two, for me, I think good on Naughty Dog. I know they're using PC Port Dev Studio to do this that they used for Uncharted and some other games, but still, it doesn't look good for Last of Us, one of their key IPs, to be like this. So how long did the shaders take to compile on my PC? I have an Intel i9 10900K CPU and an NVIDIA 3090 GPU, and it took about an hour. I was also doing stuff while streaming at the same time, so it could have been less than an hour, but it took me about an hour and 15 minutes. Then on my Steam Deck, it took about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, but I was not timing it. So what happens there is it falls within, you compile the whole thing, your 2 hours are up in your return window from Steam. But we've known from previous games where people have played it up past 2 hours, and then they hit major game-breaking bugs where the game would crash all the time. So we know from past experiences that Valve, what they did to remedy that is they just case by case. So if that was the case, at 3 hours they couldn't play the game anymore, they refunded people's games. It's not a hard set thing. They're not. Steam might be a lot of things. They can't count, Valve can't count to 3. But they're pretty good with their customer service, especially since they've repaired people's Steam Decks that have failed, and it was on the user's fault. So I have to say they do a pretty good job. So I wouldn't be too worried about that. And plus, there should be cache shaders that you can download on your Steam Deck soon. So hopefully that will happen sooner than later. But even without that, don't worry. I'm sure Steam/Valve will cover that return window. That out of the way, the story follows Joel and Ellie if you haven't played this before or watched the TV series, as they traverse the dynamic world of the spore apocalypse, where humans are just as dangerous as fungal infected people. And it really does take you across the whole view, the whole panoramic view. You have to deal with the old U.S. military that's degraded slightly into a more fascist kind of state. Then you go and deal with spore-infected zombies, essentially. Sometimes people don't like that in this, but they're zombies. They're brainless. They don't know what they're doing. And you have to follow through a city that is super up and down. You're going through skyscrapers like crazy as you survive. And then you're going to get into the wilderness, and you're going to be witness to a story that is very heartbreaking, but very human along the way. I've not played a game that is so touching to my cold, dead heart as this human story in this. And there's lots of ups and downs. There's lots of ups and downs in this game. And I love every minute of it, and I think you will too, story-wise. If you watch the TV series, it's very similar to that. So the story is going to be almost one-to-one, but in the game, you get to play between what happens in the story. You get additional dialogue unlocked, if you want to kind of see it that way, where you get to just see more of the world and how Joel and Ellie interact. It's great. They honestly, the TV series and the game are great companions for each other, and they really do unveil more based on their medium. Now, as far as the gameplay, is definitely a survival shooter where you're going to wander around these different dynamic worlds like we talked about, and you're going to have to pick up pieces to fix, to upgrade your weapon, to build med kits, to make shivs. There's a lot to it, and the shivs are very useful for lockpicking and also taking out baddies. I do recommend saving as much as you can for picking locks, as a lot of those places that you pick are storage areas where they're going to have a lot of good loot. And that is really key to surviving the apocalypse, is finding loot. And this is no exception. So make sure you explore every inch of it. And it's not hard. It's so gorgeous. I wander around so much. I'm sure people that watch me stream this are thinking I'm crazy, but it's just fun to wander and get lost in the moments along the way, because there's some bad stuff coming. Enjoy the good, but there's always there's good coming too. It's a mix. It's a good. You can't have a good story without some bad. Then the combat, where I would say in the original wasn't as strong. I feel like in this one it's definitely gotten a lot better, where it's more tight when you shoot and everything like that. It's still very similar. You can throw bottles, bricks to both stun and distract your enemy. So if you want to be more passive and not to get utterly wrecked by clickers that essentially, if they get into a certain space of you, they'll just take you out instantly. It's an instant kill. But if you can distract them or just whack them with one of those bricks, you'll stun them, and then you can take them out various different ways. But my favorite is headshots. If you can aim down and just line it up to where they're running straight towards you and take them out in the head, it's like 2 or 3 hits and they're down. And they're the hardest things, the clickers are. The newly formed zombies, the ones that look more like humans, they're not as hard to take out. So yeah, it's maybe 1-2 hits, depends, and you're done. You also can pick up boards. Those are very important. Those can take down the zombies, especially the regular zombies, in like 1, sometimes 2 hits. That is the gameplay. It is really fun, and it has a lot of... I don't come for the gameplay. I don't come for the story, surprisingly enough. I do like both of those, and I guess I do kind of come for those. I come for the gorgeous views, as always. So the requirements for this are a AMD Radeon RX 470 or an RX 6500 XT, a GeForce GTX 970, or a GeForce GTX 1050 Ti. These specs are on par or a little lower than what the Steam Deck has. And I will say, the Steam Deck does not run great with this game. It is playable. I do think the game is fun on the Steam Deck. It's not where it should be. It needs to be, if they're going to be hitting 30 frames per second, it needs to be only a couple dips into the 20s. But it is a consistently not consistent thing. If you're in the beginning of the game, you're going to be getting 30s, 40s, maybe even 50s, depending on if you have it on low and medium. I recommend, just because the change in performance isn't that big, I almost recommend just leaving the default on and then changing the FSR to balanced from quality. you'll see a little bit of a boost from there. That's the biggest boost that I saw. If you knock everything down to low, it doesn't increase the performance that much, and you do get a drastic decrease in the visuals, and it makes it a little harder to play the game, in the sense like it's just harder to aim and all that. But at the medium settings, and if you can withstand high 20s, oftentimes 30s, depending on where you're at, except for in rain, you're going to be getting on average about 25 frames per second. It's still playable, and you're not going to encounter too much gunplay in that or combat in those scenarios to where it's easy enough to just throw some bottles to get around that. But then again, it's just not a consistent thing. I will say on the Steam Deck, just be aware that you might want to wait a few weeks and see how it stabilizes. For now, if you're willing to play through that, which it was playable for me, I might actually do a full playthrough on the Steam Deck. Go at it. I don't fully recommend, I just partially recommend. With a PC, I fully recommend it as long as you have the recommended specs, which are the Radeon RX 57 XT, AMD Radeon RX 6600 XT, or the GeForce RTX 2070 Super or RTX 3060. These are beefier than what the Steam Deck is capable of, and you're going to start getting into territories where you can run it on medium and high with very little issues, where the minimum specs don't really... I feel like it's a little dishonest to keep those minimum specs there, where it doesn't work very well if in the sense like you have to have at least 30 frames per second or higher in a consistent manner in order for you to really say that's the minimum specs. Their recommended specs, I wouldn't become minimum, but they do definitely need to bump up those minimum specs or just do a little bit more performance tweaking. And I think, honestly, with the way that the deck runs it and the way that I've seen lower end PCs run it, I do think that they're going to be able to just do some performance fixes and it should stabilize. So at the end of the day, should you buy this on the PC? 100% recommend you getting this on the PC if you have one of those GPUs that we talked about. If you have something like a 3060 or higher, 3070, 3080, 3090, or in the 4000 series, you're going to have a good time there. Now, if you run into some crashes, and some environments do crash a lot. I don't know. I had a crash once, and that was due to some streaming software. Take that with a grain of salt. It's just been once so far. I'm loving the game. I do think it's worth picking it up on the PC. It looks gorgeous, and if you have a beefy enough PC, you're going to have the best experience, in my opinion, whether or not you're playing with keyboard and mouse or with the controller. Now, if you have a PS5 and you have, like, let's say a Steam Deck or a very low-end device, I would fully recommend just playing it on the PlayStation 5. Or you just wait a couple of weeks and just decide then when we see performance improvements and decide if you do want to get it on a different system than the PC. Okay, at the end of the day, you're going to love this game, so you make sure you go and buy it. If you want to help support the channel, we do have an affiliate link below in the description from Fanatical. It gets you right now about 15% off, and it is a good deal. I don't think this game's going to dip below 25% this year. That's just kind of how Sony works with these types of games, but we'll see. I don't know. They could change. So with that, let me know in the comments below what you guys think of the game. Do you like it so far? Do you think it was worth the wait? Are you saddened by some of the performance? How are you doing performance-wise? What system do you have? Let me know in the comments what your system is, what your FPS is, everything. I want to know what your experiences are because it's feeling very different across the board. I'm seeing Steam Deck numbers that are not the same numbers as mine. So with that, check out all my links in the description below that has stuff to recommended accessories for the Steam Deck. I recommend accessories for your PC, and also just sponsor stuff like Deckmate. Improve your Steam Deck, and also various other things down there that help support. So thank you guys for watching. Check out my other videos, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace out. Later.
This rain ain't gonna do us any good.
Holy shit. I'm actually outside.